Hello, it's urthpainter. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Inmotion V12. Basically, day one, when you first get this wheel. Disclaimer, this is not my first day with the wheel. I've had it for a couple weeks now. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the app. Because when you pull this thing out of the box, it requires connection to the Inmotion app before you can activate the wheel. At least that was the case with this one. So I downloaded the Inmotion app, and in order to activate the app on your phone, you have to put in a phone number and email address. You don't have to verify anything in order for the app to work. So in other words, you can put in any phone number, any email address, get into the app, turn it on, connect to your wheel. Obviously, that's up to you. I put a backup phone number and a backup email address. I have a Google Voice phone number, and I think most people have secondary emails at this point. Because I just didn't, you just don't know when you're putting that information on something like that exactly where it's going. But I understand why people would put their phone number and email in, because they might assume that they need to do a verification in order to activate the app. So I know I've just belabored that point, but that isn't the case. The app itself, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, pretty easy to navigate, find all the settings. If you do a wheel calibration, you're supposed to put the kickstand down, put the wheel on the kickstand. That is the position that the wheel needs to be in order to do a calibration. So that is worth knowing. I was not able to update the firmware automatically, but I was able to contact the seller, eWheels, and ask them to give my username to Inmotion, which allowed them to put through a firmware update, which I could do through the app. Maybe that will change in time, so where you can just update the firmware easily through the app. There are features that weren't available on the initial firmware that then were available on the new firmware, most notably the split mode, which is a setting where you can basically set both the hardness of accelerating and the pedal hardness of accelerating and the pedal hardness of decelerating. That is the split for forward and for back. I haven't had any success with the split mode myself. When I put those settings in and then I go back and recheck those settings after I've set them and exited the app, they actually reset to numbers that I hadn't set it at. So I ended up just turning split mode off. My riding mode is, I've just had it in, I think, off-road mode, and then I have it at 100%, which I think is maximum pedal sensitivity. When this wheel arrives, the pedals come at the top position. There's two other positions where you can put the pedals down. I specifically, if they've arrived at the lowest position, which I'm kind of surprised they didn't, to be perfectly honest. But I guess most people are probably going to end up putting them at the top position eventually. Now, if this is your first wheel, the first UC that you've ever ridden, I'm going to suggest that you move the pedals from the top position to the lowest position, because you will get more stability in the ride. And I think that that's kind of important if you're just starting riding. Something that can happen to new riders, it can happen to any rider actually, is a speed wobble. And I would say this wheel is pretty prone to that, when you first begin riding it, and to maybe an inexperienced rider, and definitely to a beginning rider. And in my opinion, speed wobbles occur more easily with the higher pedal position. You would just have a little bit less stability, and that just comes with riding experience, where you can actually kind of deal with the speed wobble, feel the speed wobble, and be able to control that situation when it arises. When you're a new rider, the tendency when you hit a wobble is to just keep braking, keep slowing down, backing down, or I should say I'm braking. And what ends up happening if you get into a speed wobble and you keep braking is the wobble keeps getting worse and worse. And then it'll get so bad that a rider can often come off the wheel, or a pedal will actually clip the ground from a wobble and will kick you off the back of the wheel. And that's obviously an experience you don't want to have. The solution to riding out of a speed wobble is actually accelerating. If you feel a speed wobble, if you actually kind of lean a little bit forward, that basically will get rid of the wobble almost like magic. But you can't always do that in every situation. You can be riding fast and then you have to brake, and then you feel a wobble coming on and you have no choice but to brake. And in those instances, I've found that digging a leg into one side and then attempting to turn and brake at the same time, and the wheel may, kind of fuss when you're making that move. But if you try and brake straight backwards, like I said, that's where the wobble really will increase. It's a lot more than I intended to talk about that. But it's worth talking about because, like I said, if you're a brand new rider, I would suggest putting the pedals at the lowest spot for greater stability. And then as you get used to the wheel, you can put them up. Why do you want the pedals at the highest location? Because then they're less likely to contact something on the ground. So there is a reason that you do want the pedals high. In my opinion, I think the tire pressure on this, 35 to 45 PSI. I have the tire pressure on this right around 39, 40 PSI. And I do think it is wise to keep the tire pressure high on this wheel. I have heard of instances with low tire pressure of the rim being damaged in certain situations. And, when I first started riding the Gotway MSP, I really liked low tire pressure. It also had the same CST tire tread pattern. It's an 18-inch tire. This is a 16-inch, but it is the same tire tread. And I really liked riding that MSP at low tire pressure. I just felt a greater amount of stability. But then I've discovered that going like up over curbs, downstairs, stuff like that, you could actually kind of feel the rim being compromised. So on that wheel, the MSP, I did end up putting the tire pressure definitely above 30 PSI. And I like to keep it a little higher. But on this one, I'm going to try and keep it close to 40 PSI for a couple reasons. Again, to protect the rim, and I felt very comfortable riding this wheel with the PSI at that high level. I've heard a lot of people complain about this tire, and I honestly can't speak to this tire being good or bad because I haven't experienced this wheel or a 16-inch wheel with any other tire. But I honestly have had no complaints with this tire. I felt very comfortable on the wheel. I haven't felt any issue, like overturning, turning, the way the wheel, banks on the tire. I've got a lot of that center tread worn down. And I know from experience from riding the MSP Speed. I also have the 18-inch version of this tire on my S18. I replaced the original tire with the CST tire, and I actually really like that tire. I like it a lot more than the original tire on my Kingsong S18. So I don't know. In my opinion, I'm not in any big rush to change the tire. I'll probably just wear this tire out. As you can see, I've got the Clark pads on this wheel. When I first got it, I tried riding it without any power pads, and I found just going off a curb, the side of the wheel was very slick, and that the wheel would just drop, and like my feet would come up off the pedals right off the bat without the power pads, without the leverage above my foot. And that's an experience I really don't like. So I put the power pads on immediately, and I think they're a necessity. And I like the positioning of these so that my foot fits in kind of, not hard, not real lock, but you know, just fits in with just a little bit of give, so that when I go over curbs, hit big bumps while riding, my foot will bounce into the pad and it will maintain the traction. I actually would like some additional leverage up here. I like that feel of having it a little bit higher up on my leg. But I have discovered that this pad that is on the side of this wheel is pretty much impervious to all sticky back material, like the industrial Velcro just comes right off. I actually even put some contact cement, which I've had great success sticking things to that have had problems, you know, when something doesn't want. But the contact cement it just peeled right off the surface. So yeah, this pad surface is not a great surface for trying to stick Velcro on or anything, at least in my experience. I wasn't able to get anything to stick on there very well. But I've actually gotten used to where this pad sits, and I mean, I'll have some options. There's probably some ways I could get some pads on up top if I really, really wanted them. And I know I could replace these. I've seen some replacement options for this top pad that has some leverage options. Ultimately, though, I actually do like the feel of this wheel with the Clark pad, and I do strongly suggest that people go with some sort of option on this wheel. You want to have that little bit of extra leverage, and especially that little bit above your foot, in my humble opinion. And then one other important thing, and this actually I recommend that every person who first gets the V12 check, and that is the seat of the tire, meaning is the tire was the tire properly put on the rim before it was inflated and put in the box. And the odds are, I wouldn't say odds, there's a really good chance that it wasn't properly seated. I've read numerous cases of people getting this wheel and the tire is not properly seated, and that's something that they had to go through. Which I will show right now. And you can do the spin test, look down at the tire, see if it's got like a little wobble or it's got some move. And if it does, then you obviously want to reseat it. You can also do this. So this is my method for reseating tire. I actually got this process from somebody else online. And then you can spin the tire and see both on each axis whether it's seated properly. And it has just a tiny bit of move, which I can't feel at all when riding. I'm perfectly satisfied with where the tire is seated. But if you do have an issue, you just have to completely deflate this tire. There's a ring around the tire right next to the rim, that's the bead, and then you just want to try and get that line as even right on the rim as you can, all the way around on both sides. And so if the tire is deflated on here, you can just kind of squeeze it, you can push it, and you can yank it. And I've discovered that with the V12 and the 16-inch tire, you really have to fight this tire. You really have to battle it, grab it, pushing it, like moving it around, yanking it in order to try and like budge it. So if it's not properly seated, you got to really kind of get in there and try and move the tire around. And then what I do is once I start seeing it, you know, I'll do the test and see how it's spinning. And then I will just, I have a hand or, you know, a foot pump. I'll add a little bit of air at a time, check it, add a little bit more air, check it, add a little bit more air, check it. And then once you get to like 5 pounds, 6, 7, 8 pounds of pressure, at that point, you know, I'm pretty certain that it's centered. then you can go to max pressure, check it again, and hopefully you're good. If you have any issues along the ways, you can just deflate it and squeeze the tire around, begin the process again. But putting it upside down on the chairs like this allows real clear vision. I also often put a flashlight right here that shines so you can get a real good look at the bead. And then put the flashlight over here for that. So, figure that is worth mentioning. So, those are the basics that I basically wanted to cover. Basically, talk a little bit about my experience with the wheel, and then call it good. I love this wheel. It's got an incredibly solid quality feel. Headlight is good, not great, but it's good. Screen, very cool. Trolley, very useful. I liked its just kind of a basic design, allowing for easy modification with the leverage pads. I've also added some LEDs on the bottom for night riding, and I just kind of have a battery bank, USB battery bank, Velcroed to the back of this, which the LEDs plug into, which I'm liking that as well. I do ride it, like I said, on the off-road mode, 100% sensitivity, which is basically a hard mode. I really like the acceleration. It just kind of feels like you just basically put any pressure on the front of the pedal, and you really get beautiful, torquey, active, very peppy feeling acceleration. Braking, not so much. And it's very difficult to explain why that is, because acceleration is just so clean, feels so good, but maybe it's just the way that I am used to braking on other wheels, and I haven't quite figured out how to access the reverse torque while you're going forward on this in the best possible way yet. Because basically when I just try and do my old braking style, which is most of my weight on my heels, dropping my butt like I'm sitting in a chair, this wheel just does not decelerate as fast as you would expect. And again, it's very difficult to explain. It's just something that I felt while riding it. I don't want to say it's dangerous. I just wish that I could brake faster and more comfortably. And maybe that's something that will come in time. Maybe there is a additional mode setting, maybe going a little softer, split mode in reverse, something like that. Because that is one thing I've noticed with this wheel, is that you don't get hardly any pedal dip when you're doing like banking turns, going over bumps, anything where other wheels you get that pedal dip. And that includes braking. When you brake on other wheels, the pedal will actually kind of go back a little bit, and so if you have the headlight on, you can actually see the headlight kind of go up as you're braking. This is especially true with Gotway wheels and the veteran Sherman. Perhaps not so much with King Song, although they do have that as well. But when you brake on those wheels and you get that reverse pedal dip, I think there's just a very satisfying weight shift that occurs where you're able to brake, and just the way that your feet kind of move during that braking motion, it's just something that seems to work really well. Now with this wheel, you just don't get that pedal dip. The pedals stay just very straight and rigid. So when you sit back to brake, put that weight on your heels, there's just, for me, my entire foot kind of gets this kind of like uncomfortable feel. And then, like I said, the wheel isn't braking as fast as I would expect. It's the best I can explain it. And yeah, I'm not sure. One thing I am wondering is that maybe I just shouldn't go into the chair. Maybe I should basically try to decelerate exactly like I accelerate, and basically just put that weight on the front of the pedal to accelerate, put that weight on the back of the pedal. But I do think that there is some sort of kind of difference in how this wheel accelerates and brakes, but I'm really not too sure about that. Anyways, hopefully I'll be able to chop that down into something that will help somebody when they first get their V12. If you made it this far, thanks for watching.